where the game is out of hand, like get him in, get him some reps.
Welcome back to the show. Hamilton, shut it. Here we go. The Cowboys arriving at camp, reporting in Oxnard, California. We love to see it. My next guest here, not to shut it. He's here to open up and be a revelatory, vulnerable book, an open book on all things Cowboys, manager and editor-in-chief of Bloggin' the Boys at SB Nation, RJ Ochoa, and we thank you for always sharing our stuff. You are crushing it, the best source for Cowboys info. How are you, and happy training camp?
I'm doing great, Kay. Thanks for having me. Happy training camp. Happy best time of year. Glad to see that you put the knife down. I was a little bit worried when I saw that and I was coming on next.
I have it when I need it. I have it when I get just enthusiastic enough, and I've had too much coffee, so we all know that's always the case. Okay, let's talk about Micah. Not on the team plane to Oxnard. Not a real story, right? Like, he's expected to report to camp today. How much do you expect him to practice without a new deal?
You know, Micah has done things differently, relative to other superstars in the NFL, certainly relative to other pass rushers. We saw TJ Watt and Trey Hendrickson over the offseason be a little bit different in their approach to things. He's also done things differently than previous recent Cowboys who have been in this mix. CeeDee Lamb held out last year through the Oxnard portion of camp. Dak Prescott showed up, didn't really make any kind of peep about it all. So he is very unique. I think we know that by this point in time. I think that it would be illogical for Micah to practice fully. I think we can all understand that. We can all be adult enough to square that logically in our minds. But he has pledged to be there, new head coach, new defensive coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. And so he's doing the right things while also making sure to take the appropriate care of himself. And that makes sense.
How much has it, because, we're talking in the morning meeting about this, and I think I said, does training camp matter? Like, I had Joe Theismann come on the show, or a couple people come on and say, Terry doesn't really have to be there. Terry doesn't, or Zach Ertz even said, a Super Bowl champion said, Terry doesn't have to be there till Seb wins the first game. And then you think about Micah, the positioning, like how important it is. But then it's just like what happens with the Cowboys. It's normalized that these things happen. What, in your opinion, is the collateral damage to a team trying to, that has underperformed of these things, the CD year in, year out going into camp?
Yeah, I mean, not to be woe is me about the Cowboys, but obviously it's different. I think you understand that. Certainly you've done a great job throughout your career covering that. But on top of that, the Cowboys exacerbate it, right? With making their most important, most cornerstone level players kind of crawl through what Andy Dufresne crawled through, right? To get to, the big time contract extension. And in the process, whether it's fair or unfair, whether they can control or can't control it, they let the national media kind of, and you have people saying Micah is being a poor leader or whatever the case may be. It is insane. This isn't a standpoint that Cowboys fans have developed because reasons. It is, quite frankly, illogical. You cannot logic out the reason why the Cowboys are doing this. It only costs them more money. It only seemingly stirs the pot. It only serves to provide a disconnect between the player and the organization. On Sunday, when the Cowboys arrived on their team charter, as you mentioned, in Oxnard, Tyler Smith, their incredible interior offensive lineman who's eligible for an extension himself, he was asked if he monitors the situations that Dak and CeeDee and Micah have gone through. And he said the right things. He said, I only control what I can control. But you can't help but notice that, like, dude, if they're treating these guys this way, what are they going to do to the players further down the roster?
I know, but how dangerous is that? Because, Trey also went and said this is a Super Bowl team. It's I guess, like, what is the damage there? Like, how much further behind are they, I guess, in acting this way? I
think it's player by player, not to ride the fence, but it was clear that there was a little bit of, time that CD needed last year because he'd missed training camp before he fully found his footing. Now that doesn't happen. Obviously not every player holds out, but it provides no good, right? Like, the only measurable things that we can answer here are negative in consequence, which again is why it's preposterous that the Cowboys continue to operate this way.
Yeah. I mean, Jamar Chase said, this is a guy who obviously went on to have the Triple Crown, but his number, he's like and if you really look at it, like, the first couple of weeks were not that great. Even him, and he went on to crush it, but he said that it affected him. He did. He said that not that long ago. So it certainly does. And then you've got, like, the TJ Watt getting paid. How does that affect Mike? Are we thinking he gets close to 45?
I mean, why not, right? And there's a school of thought, certainly, that Micah was always going to come in at whatever the number's going to be, regardless of where TJ Watt came in. But you introduced that variable now, right? You know, if you and I were charged with representing Micah, that becomes another tool in our arsenal, another, you know, knife on our table, so to speak. So why wait? You know, and it is important to remember, and this applies to all, is Micah going to do this or not do that in training camp stuff, that Micah was first eligible for an extension last year. He showed up. It was never a doubt. He practiced fully, et cetera, et cetera. And if the Cowboys had taken care of this in March or April of 2024, they're not dealing with the TJ Watt hurdle. They're not even dealing with the Myles Garrett hurdle. They're well in underneath this new market rate, and everybody's just sitting here talking about how efficient of an operation they have. But instead, they like to do things this way.
They certainly do. They keep it interesting. And then if they do get it done, and he is in the 40 million range, Micah, CD, and Dak are about 50% of the current cap space. I don't know if I hate that. It's earned. And I like Micah a lot. I like how he handles himself. I do. I like that he's outspoken just enough. He's still, he's very respectful towards the organization, but still speaks his mind. I think that's very hard to do. And I appreciate him as a character in the National Football League and what he does in the field, of course. Let's move on here to the biggest question you have outside of Micah that needs to be answered at training camp.
You know, Brian Schottenheimer's hiring was met with some consternation at first, and I think people cooled and chilled, and he's done a great job of winning the offseason between March and July, which is really nothing, obviously, but still significant and still substantial to give the man his due and his props. That being said, he is the offensive play caller. I know you had Deuce Vaughn on, and you've had a lot of people on talking about the scheme, the offensive scheme that Schottenheimer and new offensive coordinator Clayton Adams are going to oversee. That to me is, I mean, what is this going to look like? I know that as a football collective, we have just refused to give Mike McCarthy credit for anything that he's been a part of in his career, but the man did oversee Dak Prescott's finest season in 2023, CeeDee Lamb's finest season when he was the offensive play caller. And so you've got a lot of new variables kind of working all in unison and in parallel with one another. So how does he manage Schottenheimer, that is, being the head coach for the first time in general, obviously, and being the offensive play caller? How creative is he? These new players, these new tools, George Pickens' role. There's a lot of new ingredients in this the gazpacho that is the Cowboys offense.
The gazpacho that is the offense. We love that. You mentioned Deuce Vaughn. I thought it was very telling that he was very effusive, and I loved having him as a guest. Effusive in his commentary of George Pickens. He kind of lit up saying he's huge for us, of course, as a playmaker, what his talent level is. And then he went on, not prompted, about what a great teammate he is. What have you heard about Pickens in the building so far?
Yeah, obviously, George was annoying in Pittsburgh. I mean, and I think that's important to note that he had no, running afoul with anything other than on the field stuff with the Steelers. But it has seemed from day one that he arrived with the Cowboys that everything has been kumbaya, that everything has been harmony, everything has been bliss and sitting around the campfire and singing songs. And I buy into that. I believe that to be genuine, not just because of the community and the vibe and whatever you want to call it that the Cowboys have built, but because that's who Dak Prescott is. He's always fostered that level of leadership, even dating back to his days as a rookie. And that's who CeeDee Lamb is and has been, even dating back to his days in Norman at Oklahoma. And I think CeeDee Lamb's probably, incredibly grateful to have a legitimate wingman operating opposite of him. No disrespect to anybody who's played with him, obviously, before. I think everybody's just excited. It is, the Cowboys get stereotyped for doing X, Y, or Z, but trading for the star disgruntled wide receiver from another team is kind of their move. And so it is kind of fun and exciting. And it was sort of the first juice-filled thing that the Cowboys have done in an offseason in quite some time. And so I think everybody's just been a moth to that flame.
Yeah, huge get. By the way, the over-under for Pickens receiving on FanDuel Sportsbook right now, 900.5. I would hit the over on that. I like it, of course, based on what's going on with the quarterback. That will determine what he does. He's coming off the hammy. He's getting, speaking of FanDuel Sportsbook, his MVP odds, RJ, are plus 4,000. Let me tell you what that means. He's sandwiched between Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that when you are somebody who has come close before, like Dak has finished second 2 years ago, it's difficult, right? There's a lot of narrative behind awards like this. That being said, all due respect to players like Caleb Williams and Jared Goff and Jordan Love and even Matthew Stafford and Brock Purdy. I mean, just kind of looking at this, it is absurd. I think that I saw this morning on a national show, there was a line, on a graphic about Jalen Hurts finishing second in MVP voting in 2022, which he should be hyped up for. He's obviously done a lot in his career since then. Dak Prescott, the last time we saw Dak operate on a team that, had a mild level of competence, that wasn't intentionally stirring the pot of toxicity the way the 2024 Dallas Cowboys were, he was highly efficient. He was highly successful. And I know that the Cowboysness of everything tends to force people to, float away from reality or objectivity in that sense. But I mean, that's totally worth taking a stab at. I know I told you I would certainly hit the over on 7.5, 8.5 wins for the team. That's a different thing. But this team is going to be playoff caliber. This team's going to be in the mix. And Dak Prescott has the best 1-2 pass catching combination he's had arguably throughout his entire career. And that certainly lends to the idea that he's going to have some individual success as well.
Maybe a little scheme tweak action, certainly going under the radar, and nice to see that Micah is there, and that he is being a great teammate and knowing how important these little things do matter into getting where they want to go. We appreciate you so much. You're clearly not an Oxnard, and enjoy not getting a sunburn and covering everything the way that you always do. We appreciate it so much. You're always all over it. Thanks for sharing some of our stuff and getting our content out of there. You are crushing it. We appreciate you, RJ.
You rock, Kay. Thanks for having me.